I saw Cynthia Larson at the grocery store today. She told me Jack came home to run the family business while his brother, Jeff, recovers from his accident, stated Brenda Johnson to her daughter, Laura. Jack, asked Laura, as she suddenly decided to place a can of peas as deeply into the pantry as possible. Yes, Jack. You remember him, don't you? He's your husband, or your ex-husband. I'm not really sure which description is accurate. Is he still your husband? Mom. You know I don't like to talk about my problems with Jack. I don't know if we're still married or not. I never received any official document or notification concerning a divorce, admitted Laura, reluctantly. You've never filed for a divorce, have you? Persisted Brenda. No, I haven't, replied Laura as she studied her shoes. He's the one who left. I thought he'd file. Your situation is the strangest thing I've ever seen, declared Brenda. He left 6 years ago. In all that time, he's never called, emailed, or even wrote a letter. You can't still love him after all he's done to you. Or can you? Laura again turned her eyes downward but gave no response. Well, shit, exclaimed her mother. Don't tell me you're one of those women who accept abuse and even think you deserve it. He left you. This is on him, Laura. A man who abandons his wife without so much as an explanation deserves no consideration. Now that he's in town, divorce his ass. He was a great guy when you married him. In fact, he was fine right up to the day he left. I liked him. He seemed responsible, considerate, hardworking, and devoted to you. Suddenly, he was gone. You're still young. You should find a good man you can depend on and start a nice family. I'll make my own decisions, Mother. I'm 27, have a good job, and live in my own house. I'm not a burden to you and Dad, so I'd appreciate it if you'd stop trying to run my life, replied Laura. I just want you to be happy, sweetheart. I don't think you have been since the day Jack left. If he had loved you even a little bit, he never would have abandoned you like he did. He probably had a girlfriend. No. Jack would never cheat. He's not that way, was Laura's immediate response. Laura's quick and vehement response surprised her mother. Her daughter still defended the man who had packed up and left her in the middle of the night. How could she? Why would she? Laura had insisted they had not argued prior to Jack leaving, but she had never offered any information on what could have precipitated such a dramatic rift in their relationship. Brenda was certain Laura was not telling the complete story, and it was unlikely she ever would. Laura Masterson didn't sleep very well that night. She tossed and turned, trying to get comfortable, but sleep eluded her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jack looking back at her. He was the best-looking man she had ever known. He was funny, relaxed, and devoted to her, or at least he had been before she ruined everything. Now he was back in Stone Ridge. Laura knew they were bound to cross paths at some point. After so many years, she still had no idea what to say to him. What could she possibly say? She knew how trite an apology would seem. There were no words to adequately describe the depth of her remorse. She had destroyed their relationship. It could never be the same. Her life wasn't some kind of fairy tale. It was real, and it sucked. 2 days later, Laura was again visiting at her mother's house when her younger sister, Kate, a senior at Ohio State, came in after work. She was a journalism major, consequently, she had a summer job at a local media group. I saw your husband today, Laura. He stopped in to place some ads. Are you interested in hearing about it? Asked Kate. If she isn't, I am, interjected the girl's mother. How did he look? Well, if anyone was hoping he'd gone all to hell, they'd be pretty disappointed, replied Kate with a slight grin. He just might be the best-looking man I've ever seen. Really, replied Brenda with arched eyebrows. Can I assume he didn't get fat or lose all his hair? He was wearing a pocket t-shirt and jeans. He looked totally ripped from what I could see. Donna handled the ad, but I watched and listened from the next room. He never saw me, added Kate. Did you hear him say anything? Asked Laura softly. Like what a dumbass he was for leaving you. No, he just gave Donna the ad and paid her. His daughter is stunning, though, slipped in Kate as she watched her sister for her reaction. He has a daughter, demanded Brenda, as Laura sat in stunned silence. That's why he left. He had some girl pregnant. You're lucky to be rid of him, Laura. I don't think too many women would feel that way after seeing him in that tight shirt and jeans, rejoined Kate. He oozes sex appeal. Besides, his daughter looked too old to have been born after he left Stone Ridge. My guess would be she's around 12 or 13, revealed Kate. How could he have a daughter 12? He's only 28 years old now. He would have had to have been 16 when he became a father. We know that didn't happen, reasoned Brenda as Laura remained silent. I heard him introduce the girl to Donna as his daughter. Her name is Kansas. The kid is gorgeous. She looks quite athletic and seems to be a daddy's girl. Did Jack's daughter have dark hair like him? Managed Laura. She's a stunning blonde, replied Kate as she watched her sister closely. Whatever her ethnicity, it sure works for her. Oh. I just thought of something, proclaimed Kate. Since Jack is her father and you're still his wife, you must be her stepmom or something. Kate. That was just plain mean, scolded Brenda as Laura fled to the bathroom. There's something strange about all of this. I've a feeling it'll all come out pretty soon. Secrets don't usually last too long in a small town, although this one has survived 6 years. Who was that pretty girl in the other room? Asked Kansas as she and Jack left the media group's office. She couldn't take her eyes off you. Remember I told you about how I was married years ago? She was my ex-wife's sister, Kate. She must be about 22 by now. I guess she was surprised to see me. Was your wife as pretty as her sister? Questioned Kansas. She was even prettier, responded Jack with a small smile as he recalled Laura's face. She was absolutely beautiful. Kansas studied Jack's face before speaking. You really loved her, didn't you? Why did she cheat on you? I wouldn't have told you that if I had known we'd be moving back to Stone Ridge, allowed Jack. Please don't mention that to anyone. Unless she told people, no one knows why we broke up. There's no reason to hurt her now. You're something. You don't want to hurt her after what she did to you? Most guys would want to choke her to death, but not you. She sure messed up a good thing, but I'm glad she did. I don't know where I'd be or who I'd be with if you hadn't moved to Thompson and worked with my dad. Yeah, he didn't think it was so lucky at the time, but it worked out pretty well for me. I have the best daughter in the world now. It feels pretty good telling people you're my daughter, even if Brian was your real father. We both know he was the best guy ever, stated Jack with a sad smile. He told me I should call you Dad, if I felt okay doing it. You're my father now, and I love you like you're my real father. You never had to take me in, but you did. I was lucky we already had the same last name, confessed Kansas. We were lucky Brian had enough warning to make plans. He was the one who insisted we start the adoption process. Having your father testify before he died about how he wanted you adopted by me really eliminated a lot of red tape. I miss him a lot, but I love being your daughter. Is it okay to feel that way? Asked Kansas with sudden concern. That's exactly what Brian wanted, assured Jack. He knew he wouldn't be around to watch you grow into a beautiful and independent woman. He honored me when he asked if I'd become your dad. It was a no-brainer. You realize we're going to have trouble finding a new mom for me if you're already married, pointed out Kansas. Maybe we should meet with Laura and ask her if she's divorced you. Let's wait on that, cautioned Jack. When I filled out the adoption papers, I stated I was married. Social services seldom looks kindly on single men adopting beautiful young women. Let's get you in school and establish our position in the community. Once we're sure no one's going to cause trouble for us, we can approach Laura to get a copy of the divorce decree. We won't be looking for a new mom before then, okay? Sure, Dad. I understand. I just know there'll be all kinds of women wanting to marry you. We just need to make sure we find one who's right for both you and me. Not every woman will accept a daughter tagging along on dates, teased Kansas. Stop worrying about that. If a woman can't fully accept you, she'll have no chance with me, promised Jack. You'll always be my daughter. Your kids will be my grandchildren. End of discussion. Kansas threw her arms around Jack and hugged him tightly. Jack was well aware how losing her mother as an infant and her father in the past year had caused her a great deal of anxiety. He had to constantly remind her he loved her dearly, and that he'd never abandon her. Jack had explicitly told his mother what topics would be off limits when he and Kansas moved in with her. He was there to help run the family construction business and wouldn't tolerate any meddling in his personal affairs. His mother, Janet, had readily agreed. Jack wondered about her quick acquiescence, but decided to say no more on the subject. Jack was washing up in the bathroom when he overheard Kansas talking to his mother. "Grandma, we saw Laura's sister, Kate. She's really pretty. Do you think Laura is as pretty as her sister?" Jack had to strain to hear his mother's response. He knew she was trying very hard to avoid him hearing her. He had made it clear that Laura, her family, and everything concerning Laura were taboo subjects. "Sweetheart, Laura is a beautiful woman. She was pretty when she and Jack were married, but she's matured into a confident, capable young woman. I don't see her very often because of how things are between her and Jack, but she's always been very polite to me. If it were up to me, those two would still be together and give you some brothers and sisters. It's too bad it isn't up to me. This is a subject I promised I wouldn't discuss, so we'd better change the topic before your father hears us," concluded Janet. "Dad drove me past my new school this afternoon," revealed Kansas as Jack walked into the room and took a seat at the kitchen table. "Their soccer field looked like it's in great shape. I can't wait to try out for the team. I saw online there would be tryouts next Tuesday afternoon." "I didn't know you played soccer," exclaimed Janet, but with less enthusiasm than Jack expected. In fact, the information seemed to trouble his mom. "It's my favorite sport. I was one of the better players on a traveling team back when we lived in Thompson. We only lost one match," boasted Kansas. "She was far and away the best player on the team," remarked Jack with a chuckle. "She's just being modest." "That sounds wonderful," praised Janet as she pondered whether she should tell Jack who the coach was. She hid her grin as she thought how that first practice would go and the shock Jack had in store. He was the one who insisted no one speak of Laura. She was just following his unreasonable demands, and it appeared it might backfire on him. Laura was listening to the mother of one of the girls as she watched the 20 or so girls kick soccer balls to each other. Her eyes were drawn to the tall blonde girl. Her footwork was flawless as she effortlessly dribbled the ball, bounced it from foot to foot, and easily fired it past the girl who had been their best goalie the previous year. As soon as she was able to gracefully escape the small talk made by the loquacious mother, she strolled over to watch the blonde girl more closely. Sensing her presence, the girl stopped working the ball and swung to look into Laura's eyes. "Hi. I'm the team coach," began Laura. "Everyone calls me Coach, or Coach Masterson. You look like you know your way around a soccer field." The girl's jaw dropped as Laura spoke. She intently studied Laura from head to toe before finally speaking. "Hello, ma'am. I'm Kansas Masterson. I think my dad was your husband years ago. I really love soccer, but if you think it'll be impossible to treat me fairly, I'll understand and try field hockey. I don't want to place you in a bad spot." By now, all of the girls had gathered closer to listen to the exchange. The new girl was Mrs. Masterson's husband's daughter. The two had obviously never met before. Laura was taken completely by surprise when the girl explained she was Jack's daughter. As she gathered her thoughts, she realized she should have guessed it from the description Kate had provided. The girl was extremely pretty and very athletic. "Kansas, as you can tell, this is a bit of a surprise to me. I had no idea you were Jack's daughter. Let me assure you that your play on the field, your effort in practice, and your ability to fit in with the others on the team will determine your playing time. I have no reason to not be totally fair with you," assured Laura. As Laura spoke, the girl studied her face carefully. It was as if the girl was the one who would determine what their relationship would be. As Laura finished speaking, Kansas nodded her head slightly, as if in some sort of acknowledgement. Grandma Masterson knew you were the coach. She never said anything because of Dad's rules, revealed Kansas with a chuckle. I can't wait to see his face when I tell him you're my coach. Your father isn't here, is he? Asked Laura as she quickly looked around the field. No, he's running a backhoe this afternoon, replied Kansas. He's been helping Uncle Jeff since he was hurt in an accident. He was right about you, though. Kansas turned and began to walk away when Laura called her name. Kansas swung to face Laura again, only to have her move closer and speak softly into her ear. What do you mean he was right about me? What did he say about me? Laura was terrified to hear the pretty girl's response, but she hadn't seen or heard from Jack in years. She was starved for information about him. If he still hated her, it was best she find out right away. Well, Coach, whispered Kansas so only Laura could hear, Dad said you were the most beautiful cheating slut he ever saw. Laura reacted as if the blonde girl had slapped her face. She gasped, dropped to her knees and burst into tears. Kansas had expected contempt, anger, embarrassment, or a combination of those emotions. Seeing how her words had devastated the woman caused Kansas to reconsider the entire situation. She had hated Laura Masterson ever since she first heard the story of how she had cheated on Jack. In the process, Laura had nearly destroyed him. Kansas had made up her mind that if she ever got the opportunity, she'd tell the slut exactly what she thought of her. Somehow, Laura Masterson didn't fit the mental picture Kansas had created. She seemed to be liked and respected by the other girls. Kansas had noticed how popular the coach was within a few minutes of her arrival. Now the woman demonstrated actual despair over the words Kansas had spoken. They were the exact words she had promised herself she'd use if she ever met the woman who had hurt Jack so deeply. Kansas felt no pleasure in her revenge. She walked slowly over to sit on the bench and wait for her inevitable dismissal. What did you say to Coach Masterson? Demanded a woman Kansas guessed to be the team's late arriving assistant coach. She scanned a list of names on her clipboard. What's your name? I'm Kansas Masterson. I'm sorry if I caused a problem, apologized Kansas. Masterson, repeated the stunned woman. Are you related to Jack Masterson? He's my dad, asserted Kansas with an attitude she hoped seemed like pride. I think you'd better leave, advised the woman. Coach Masterson is a wonderful woman. She sure doesn't need to be reminded of her deadbeat husband every day on the soccer field. Kansas simply nodded and turned toward the gate. She was about to leave the playing area when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Kansas swung around in surprise only to be enveloped in a hug from the sobbing Laura Masterson. I'm so sorry, was all the woman could manage over and over as she clutched Kansas. Uncertain how to react, Kansas simply remained still as Laura gradually regained control of her emotions. Her sobbing eventually stopped. Once again, the other girls were gathered around as they watched the scene in fascination. Your father is a fine man. Please stay and join the team, managed Laura. If you're anything like Jack, you'll be a great addition. I promise I'll never get all emotional on you again. Come back, please. Kansas found herself being led back to the bench area by Coach Masterson. Once they reached the bench, Laura turned her around to face the other girls. There's no use denying I pretty much broke down a few minutes ago. I want you to understand why. This is Kansas Masterson. Her father is my ex-husband. Having her suddenly appear shook me badly. I haven't seen her father in 6 years. Even though I knew he was back in Stone Ridge, I was still surprised to find Kansas here today. I want all of you to treat Kansas kindly. None of this drama was her fault. It would be wrong to blame her. Looking directly at Kansas, Laura then asked a question the answer to which she dreaded. Is your mother here somewhere? I'd like to meet her and compliment her on what a lovely daughter she has. Mom died when I was 3, replied Kansas with some emotion. It's just me and Dad. I apologize for being rude earlier. Dad will ground me for being such a witch. I'm sorry, Coach Masterson. Laura's head was spinning as she considered Kansas' words. Her mother had died when she was 3? How was that possible? That was about 10 years ago. Jack was still in high school at that time. She decided it was a puzzle for another time. We started out on the wrong foot, replied Laura. Let's start over. I'm Coach Masterson and you're Kansas. Let me go over my team rules and expectations with everyone. Then we'll start practice. At the end of practice, Kansas climbed into her grandmother's SUV for the ride home. How was your first practice, dear? It went pretty well, declared Kansas. The girls were all nice to me and some of them are pretty good players. I think we'll have a good team. That's nice, replied Janet before asking about the coach. How did you like the coach? I hear she's pretty good. Why don't you just ask what you really want to know, Grandma, replied Kansas with a smile. Okay. How did you get along with Laura? Was she surprised to find out who you were? Asked Janet. Did you like her? Well, she was nicer than I thought she'd be. She still gets pretty emotional about Dad, and it's been like 6 years. Jack never told anyone why he left her. I don't know how much he told you, but they were a beautiful young couple. They seemed so much in love. Then one night, Jack got in his truck and drove away, recounted Janet. I don't think he ever spoke to Laura again. I've heard she doesn't know why Jack left. She can't put this on Dad, exclaimed Kansas fiercely. She knows exactly why Dad left. She drove him away. He's not the bad guy in this. Okay, I guess Jack has talked to you about it, reasoned Janet. I'm glad to hear Jack didn't just run out on Laura without reason. Can you tell me why he left? Only Dad, or Coach, can exp. Lane it to you. I promised Dad I'd never tell anyone, replied Kansas. Dinner was waiting for Jack when he got home. After cleaning up, he sat at the table and asked Kansas how her soccer went as he speared a pork chop. It started out a little rough, admitted Kansas as Janet watched closely. Coach seemed upset when I told her my name. We had a little discussion. Everything was smoothed over in the end. Jack noticed his mother twitch as Kansas succinctly described her day. He knew it was a sure indication there was more to the story. Is your coach a friend of Laura's? I should have considered that possibility. Do you think you'll get a fair shake? Laura Masterson is my coach, Dad. Jack was speechless for a full minute as his mind worked to consider the ramifications of Kansas' declaration. He realized he had made a mistake in not finding out more about Laura's current situation. Jack's mother was smiling broadly when Jack turned to look at her. She was still able to read her son's face and she knew what conclusion he had reached. Mom, can you tell Kansas and me more about Laura? It seems we'll be having contact with her on a regular basis, admitted Jack, reluctantly. Well, it's so nice of you to ask, finally. Laura is a middle school math teacher at Stone Ridge. She has coached soccer for 3 years. They lost only 2 matches last year. She's still single, or married to you, depending on what rumor you choose to believe. The consensus is her husband cut and run one dark and stormy night, probably because he had a girlfriend on the side. That's not true. Dad never cheated on that. Kansas. What did I tell you about that kind of talk? Interrupted Jack. I expect you to speak and behave in a respectful manner when you're around Laura. Please don't do anything I have to apologize to her for, insisted Jack. That would be awkward, to say the least. Jack noticed how Kansas's face flushed red as she quickly looked down at her plate. He drew a deep breath before speaking. What did you do, Kansas? How bad was it? I may have called her a pretty bad name, but I apologized to her, added Kansas immediately. I think we're fine now. She treated me like any of the other girls during practice. Exactly what did you say? Asked Jack as he cursed himself for telling Kansas the reason for his failed marriage. I need to whisper it to you. Grandma shouldn't hear it. I know it was wrong, but it just came out. I'm really sorry, Dad. Kansas stood and walked closer to Jack and whispered in his ear. Janet wasn't able to hear what the girl told Jack, but his reaction made it obvious he wasn't happy. Kansas, I told you something in confidence and you failed to keep it in confidence, complained Jack as he worked to contain his annoyance. This puts me in a very uncomfortable position. I expect you to learn from this mistake. I was sorry as soon as I said it, responded Kansas contritely. It hurt her a lot more than I expected, admitted Kansas. I forgot to tell you that she told the girls that you're her ex-husband. We can find a new wife for you now. Laura had been an emotional mess. She struggled to behave normally to make it through the team practice. She was thankful she lived alone as she sat in her favorite chair and cried off and on for several hours. School was still 2 weeks away, but practice for fall sports had begun. While she didn't have to get up early to teach class, she still needed to prepare for soccer practice. As she drove to the school the next afternoon, she told herself it would be a much easier day. Yesterday's drama wouldn't be repeated. Then she almost collided with Jack Masterson as she hurried to the back of her SUV to remove the team equipment. Hello, Laura. Do you have a minute? I'd like to apologize to you. I guess, replied Laura, even as the thought of Jack having to apologize to her seemed ludicrous. Is there a problem? Kansas told me what she said to you yesterday. That was wrong. I've tried to raise her better than that. Part of it is my fault. I never should have told her why we separated. She and my cousin Brian are the only two people I've ever told, Jack assured Laura. She's young and she felt the need to hurt you. Laura couldn't help but notice how great Jack looked in a plain cotton t-shirt and jeans. His stomach was flat and the muscles in his chest stretched the fabric covering it. His arms were muscular and defined. He was wearing his hair longer than she remembered. She had to admit it looked good. His jawline was strong and his smile infectious. He was a very good-looking man in a very masculine way. She didn't say anything that wasn't true. We both know that, Jack, unless you don't think I'm beautiful. That was the only part anyone could dispute, replied Laura as she wiped stray tears from her cheeks. I don't want you to suffer now for something that happened 6 years ago, responded Jack. It's over and done. We've both moved on. It's time to bury the past and look ahead. Over and done, repeated Laura. That sounds simple enough. We'll just act like we were never in love, never were married, and I never fucked that asshole. This should work fine, managed Laura before tears began streaming down her cheeks. Jack wanted to take Laura in his arms and hug her to his chest, but worried he'd be sending the wrong message. Unable to come up with any idea how to handle the sobbing woman, he simply stood close by and watched. As he waited, he had time to study his former wife. Her legs were tanned and strong. Her ass looked a little smaller and tighter than he remembered. Laura wore her hair in a ponytail. It allowed Jack to see the curve of her jaw and her slender neck. She was still the most beautiful woman he had ever known. Laura finally gained control. She looked into Jack's eyes and spoke softly. I'm sorry, Jack, for so many things. I was a damn fool when I slept with that asshole. I was just as wrong when I allowed everyone to think you left me for no reason. I kept hoping you'd come back and forgive me. Telling people what a dumb bitch I was would only have made our reconciliation more difficult. You never came back and I never told anyone the truth. You were gone and I was living here, so I took the easy way out. I let people blame you. I'll tell everyone the truth. You don't deserve nasty comments or the contempt of people in the community. I forced you to leave. I know a man like you will never be able to accept my actions. You'll never take me back. I wouldn't even take me back. I don't deserve forgiveness. Laura, I'm fine with the way things are. I haven't experienced any blowback for leaving. I'm sure people naturally thought I was a jerk to bail on such a beautiful woman. They're as likely to question my sanity as my character, Jack wisecracked. You were always a gentleman, marveled Laura as she faced him. Your daughter is a delightful girl. I don't blame her for saying what she did. Please don't be too hard on her. I think she's going to be my star player. It was nice to see you and clear the air, replied Jack. We'll be seeing each other a lot with Kansas on your team. I hope we can get along without any drama. I have to tell you that you're even more beautiful than you were when we were married. Thank you, kind sir, responded Laura. You look like you've put on a few pounds, mostly in your arms and chest. I never thought of you as chiseled before, but the term fits you now. Thanks for taking time to settle things a little between us. Jake noticed there were around a dozen girls hanging off to the side watching him speak with their coach. He was keeping Laura from her duties, so he nodded and went back to his truck to leave. That was Kansas's father, gasped a red-headed girl to her friends. He's a hunk. My dad's going bald and has a big belly. He looks a lot older than Mr. Masterson, too. Why would Coach Masterson ever dump him, wondered another girl. My mom has been looking for a new husband since her divorce. Maybe I'll tell her about Kansas's dad. Laura had a standing invitation to stop at her parents' house for dinner during soccer season. Her mom always had dinner on the table shortly after practice was over. Her mother had begged off making dinner the previous evening because she had bridge club, but the family was together for dinner the second night of practice. How's the team looking? Asked her father as he helped himself to the potatoes. Are the girls going to do as well as last year? It looks like I'll have the best team yet, allowed Laura as she considered how much she should reveal about Jack and Kansas. Your best player is back again, right sis? Asked Kate. I know she had another year before she went into high school. I'm pretty sure the team has a new best player, revealed Laura. You saw her the other day. You mean Jack's daughter? She's playing soccer on your team? You can't make this stuff up, added Kate with a chuckle. Tell us about her. She's obviously played a lot of soccer. She's fast, athletic, and smart. Most of the girls like her, explained Laura. She's also a lovely girl. Wow, exclaimed Kate. How did she react to you? Did she know her stepmom was her coach? What did she say? She was as surprised as I was when we met. I told her I was Coach Masterson and she knew immediately I had been married to her father. I think we'll get along fine. She's really a nice girl. Did you see Jack? Asked Janet. Did he have the nerve to speak to you, at least? I spoke with Jack today before practice. We ironed some things out. It wasn't as awkward as I had feared, confessed Laura. Just what exactly did you iron out? Demanded Janet. Did he apologize? Not that anything he could ever say would be a suitable explanation for abandoning his wife. We had an adult conversation without throwing blame or recriminations. Jack was a total gentleman, conceded Laura. He even told me I was more beautiful than when we were married. Hallelujah, interjected Janet. It follows that you're not married to him anymore. You're free to find a husband who'll treat you with love and respect. I pretty much had one, Mom, managed Laura as tears trickled down her cheeks. I don't deserve a good husband. I didn't keep the one I had. He's the one who left, pointed out Laura's father. I should probably look him up and kick his ass. I wouldn't advise trying it, Dad. He's got the look of a man who can handle himself quite well. Did he look ripped to you, Laura? Questioned Kate as Laura wiped her tears. That's an understatement. You're a big guy, Dad. I appreciate how you want to protect me, but please don't have words with Jack. He's different now than he was when he left. He's matured. He's obviously far stronger and more confident than he used to be. That was pretty apparent. That's it, demanded Janet. After 6 years, he comes back to town with a blonde daughter and not so much as an explanation to the wife he deserted? How did you keep from slapping his face? Mom, it never occurred to Sis to slap the guy. She's still in love with him. Look at her. I can't explain it, but she loves him more today than she did the day he left, declared Kate. I'm just a dumb bitch. Go ahead and say it, sobbed Laura. I screwed up the best thing I ever had. I deserve to be laughed at, and even worse. Sis. You're not dumb, responded Kate contritely. I don't know what happened between you two, but if you still love the jerk, I'm on your side. I'll help any way I can. I want to see you happy again. There's nothing anyone can do. He divorced me. We'll never be together. Helping me accept that it's over is the best thing you can do for me. Kate simply pulled her sister into a hug. She didn't say any more, but decided she would talk to Jack and find out why he left her sister, and see if there was any chance they could get back together. The next morning, Jack had just getting ready to deliver the day's instructions to his men when Kate Johnson walked into the building. The men knew enough of Jack's history with her sister, Laura, to remain silent when Kate approached him. "What can I do for you, Kate?" asked Jack in a professional manner. "I want to buy you lunch today at Ellie's. Would you meet me there at noon?" Jack had no choice but to agree. He would never refuse a lady a request like that in front of others. In reality, he always liked Kate and was not opposed to having lunch with an attractive young woman. Kate was already at a booth when Jack walked in. She stood and wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug. "Thanks for coming, Jack. You look great. You've become a very beautiful woman, Kate." "It's good for my ego just to be seen with you," replied Jack smoothly. "You always were a gentleman. How about we order and then we can catch up?" "I have a lot of questions," admitted Kate. "The first is what you've been doing to get so ripped." Once they placed their order, Jack began answering Kate's many questions. "When I left Stone Ridge, I went to visit my father's cousin's son, Brian Masterson. We had only met a few times, but we had connected on Facebook and he was always friendly. Brian had 10 years on me. His wife, Anna, had died a few years earlier from a botched medical procedure. Kansas was 7 when I first met her. Sadly, her father was diagnosed with testicular cancer a little over 18 months ago. He and I had become close. He could see I thought the world of Kansas, so he made it his mission to help me legally adopt her when he learned he was dying. It wasn't easy, but we had everything approved just before he passed away almost a year ago," stated Jack sadly. "Oh, Jack. That must have been a very difficult experience for you. I can't imagine how Kansas managed. I saw you in our offices the other day and she's a stunning girl. I could tell she was very fond of you. I'm impressed a single man was allowed to adopt a preteen girl. I've heard horror stories about how difficult those adoptions are. Between you and me, I didn't know Laura had actually divorced me, so I stated I was married in the documents. I honestly thought I was. Kansas is my life now. I can't imagine not having her with me. She's still worried about the adoption. She knows how closely authorities watch single men who adopt girls. She wants to help me find a wife as soon as possible, but really it's a mom she wants." Kate knew that Laura believed Jack had divorced her. Now Jack was telling her he thought Laura had divorced him. Kate filed that information away, thinking it might come in handy at some point. "That brings me to one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you, Jack," segued Kate. "You've seen Laura. You know how beautiful she is. She finished college and has a teaching degree. She bought a small rancher 2 years ago. Kids at school love her. I don't think she's dated anyone since you left. Is there any chance the two of you might get back together? You made the perfect couple," stated Kate with conviction. "I'm sorry, Kate. That won't be happening. We're different people now than we were when we got married. We went in different directions. There's nothing left for us," replied Jack. "You've both changed, but for the better, at least in my opinion," asserted Kate. "I'm sure she's still in love with you, Jack. What happened to make you leave?" "She must have told you something about it," reasoned Jack. "Did she say it was my fault?" "Not once. She said you two disagreed on something and you left. She kept expecting you to come back," added Kate. "Well, I'm back now," offered Jack with a weak grin. "It just took me 6 years to make it." "What did you do while you were gone?" "You've obviously gained weight and it's all muscle," noted Kate as she looked at Jack's arms and chest. Brian had purchased a large warehouse during the last economic downturn. Anna had a dance studio in a section of it. Brian put in a gym and then added a dojo. 2 years ago we started having yoga classes in the upstairs area. You may not believe it, but I became a yoga instructor, a personal trainer and a weekend sensei for teens. You only had a semester left for your science degree when you left. Did you ever pursue it?" quizzed Kate. Yeah, I took night classes. I even have a teaching certificate. It looked good when I was teaching martial arts and yoga. Brian and I both had degrees. I think it helped us appear more legitimate. Kate hugged Jack again as she said her goodbyes. I really enjoyed our lunch. I'm sorry you feel so strongly about getting back with Laura, but I hope we can still be friends. I'd like that, responded Jack. I can always use friends. Say hello to your folks for me. Ah, Jack? I'd suggest you kind of avoid them. They're not very happy with the ways things turned out between you and Laura, advised Kate. That's not surprising, replied Jack with a chuckle. Your folks were always dedicated to you girls. I don't blame them for disliking me. In fact, I'd be shocked if they didn't. The next morning found Laura feeling better than she had in a long time. She hadn't realized how her guilt and worry had shaped her life over the past 6 years. She had made peace with Jack and with herself. She desperately wished she had never been unfaithful and Jack still loved her, but she had to accept her reality and make the best of it. As Laura approached the practice field that afternoon, she saw Kansas doing some stretches while the other girls watched. Soon they joined Kansas, or at least they tried. How can you possibly bend like that and keep your balance? Asked one girl after she fell to the ground. It seems like you're defying gravity. Dad helped me to learn my stretching routine. It borrows from both yoga and martial arts. He could teach you, but I can't. I'm not sure where to begin. I can do the stretches, but I don't know exactly how I progressed to this point, confessed Kansas. You dad can do these stretches? Asked an incredulous friend. I thought men couldn't bend as well as women, especially guys with muscles like your father's. They can do it if they work at it, but most men hate to put in the effort it requires. They'd rather do the martial arts stuff where they can hit and block, replied Kansas. A lot of dad's physique actually came from yoga. Maybe he'd show us how to do those stretches, suggested another girl. I know he works, but maybe after practice, we could stay a little longer for some instruction. I don't know if Dad has time. Besides, I don't think Coach would go for it. She might think Dad is interfering with her team. He's very careful about being around underage girls. He always had at least one adult in kids' classes. Kansas, if Jack would be willing to show these girls how to do your stretches, I'd be happy to stay and chaperone, broke in Laura. I can just see other teams watching you girls do Kansas's routine. We'd be inside their heads before the match even started. Jack was surprised that evening after practice when he stopped to pick up Kansas. All the girls on the team, along with Laura and a few mothers, greeted him. Dad, the other girls saw me do my pregame stretching and want to learn how to do them. I kind of told them you're a yoga instructor and might be willing to work with us after practice for half an hour or so. Laura watched Jack's face soften as he listened to Kansas. He was unable to hide his smile as he listened to his daughter. She felt a pang of jealousy at the obvious love he held for her. I guess I could, but I'd need at least one adult present at all times. That isn't negotiable, insisted Jack. Kansas told us you'd want an adult. I've already promised the girls I'd chaperone the instruction. Would it be okay if I worked out with the girls? Requested Laura. Some of us moms would like to take advantage of the situation of you don't mind. I doubt I'd ever be able to do what Kansas does, but I could use any improvement I might get, stated a slightly overweight woman with red hair. We'll start tomorrow. I'll bring a change clothes with me. I suggest you all dress appropriately for yoga. I'll gear my instruction for the girls. They're young and athletic, so they'll probably progress faster. The moms shouldn't be discouraged if the kids pick it up faster, cautioned Jack. Jack never managed to get out of the yoga instructions in less than an hour. The girls were already athletic and worked hard to gain the grace and strength Kansas displayed. 3 single mothers showed up faithfully. Laura had no doubt why they were so interested. The low, tight tops and tight yoga pants created visions few men could ignore. For his part, Jack enjoyed working with the girls. He learned their names. He knew many of their families since he had grown up in Stone Ridge. He was pleased at how seriously they took his instruction. Laura was a different matter. She always dressed more conservatively than the three mothers, but she looked amazing. She was very fit and surprisingly strong. She was able to learn many of the positions as well as the girls, and better than a couple of them. She wasn't clingy or apologetic. She was always friendly, yet professional. It was before the third game against a local rival when the girls broke out their pre-game stretching routine. Kansas brought a Bluetooth speaker and played music as she led her team in their workout. The players and fans from the other school stopped to watch, an obvious surprise. The girls were delighted their routine had the desired effect. They went on to score a decisive victory over their opponent. After the game, Kansas approached Laura as her teammates grouped around her. "Coach, have you ever considered entering the Harper soccer tournament?" began Kansas. "They have different age groups competing. Our team fits perfectly into the 12 to 14 group. I think we could win it, or at least do pretty good." "I know about that tournament. Other coaches have mentioned it at seminars and training sessions," admitted Laura. "I understand the competing teams are composed of the best players from several schools. The competition is intense. There's also a matter of an entry fee. I think it's $500 per team, with the proceeds benefiting the woman's shelter in Harper. I'm certain the school board would never approve that sort of expenditure. Would you be willing to coach us if we went independently of the school and the entry fee was donated by a local business?" asked a very serious Kansas. Laura looked at Kansas and then the other girls. It was apparent they wanted to go to the tournament, and they wanted her to coach them when they did. "You understand the competition would be much tougher than the teams we play in our league, don't you? Every game would be pretty much against an all-star squad," pointed out Laura. "Coach, I played in that tournament last year," asserted Kansas. "I was on a traveling team. We won 2 games and they were incredible. We lost the third game by 1 goal to the team that wound up winning the tournament. I know our team's good enough to play with them. We just need a good coach to make it work." "It sounds like you've looked into this already. Did you say you have a sponsor lined up?" asked Laura. "Yeah, I already talked to a local business about it. They're willing to front the entry fee and pay for motel rooms for the entire team and coaches. It's on the long Columbus Day weekend. The championship games are played on Monday, so we'll be there 3 nights. Laura felt her appreciation, and even admiration for the lovely blonde girl, increase as she listened to Kansas make her argument. She planned on playing in the finals. Laura felt tremendous pride in the group of girls standing before her. They simply didn't have the horses to play the caliber opponents they were likely to meet, but Laura would never tell that to her girls. "Let's do it," agreed Laura with enthusiasm. "There's no better way to improve than to play against the best. Tell me what I need to do and I'll get it done." "Thanks, Coach," yelled the excited girls in unison. "Here's the website. I wrote down your username and password. You have to get on the site and enter us by midnight. They need 1 more team to have a total of 16, which is perfect for a single elimination tournament," explained Kansas. "The entry fee's been paid." "Wow. You sure have things under control," replied Laura with a chuckle. "Our team name is Ridge Runners," revealed Kansas. "We'll have shirts with our names on the back and the team name on the front. This is going to be so much fun." "Is Jack sponsoring the team?" asked Laura once she was alone with Kansas. "Our sponsor chooses to remain anonymous," replied Kansas with a big smile. "I can give you a hint. Our sponsor insisted you agree to coach us or the deal was off. For some reason, said sponsor thinks you do a great job as a coach and as a role model for us impressionable girls." "That would leave Jack out then, wouldn't it?" joked Laura. "Don't underestimate Dad," cautioned Kansas. "He keeps a close watch on things. He wants the best for me, and for the rest of the team." Less than 2 weeks later, Kansas led her team in warm-up exercises on a sunny Saturday morning as they prepared for their first game. A surprisingly large contingent from Stone Ridge had made the journey to support the team. Jack beamed as Kansas kept the girls smiling and laughing as they prepared for their first match. He noticed the other team watched the warm-ups closely. By this time, the girls were able to go through the stretches and poses more or less in unison, and it was impressive to watch. The match began with the other team scoring a goal within a minute of play. 2 minutes later, the same girl scored again. Laura was concerned about her team's ability to come back from a deficit. They had not trailed in a game all season while winning 6. A short time later, play stopped as an opposing player was helped off the field with a sprained ankle. Laura called Kansas off the field and sent in her replacement. Do you see what's happening out there? We need to stop that girl from scoring. She's playing all over the field. I want pressure on her when she gets near the ball. Be sure the girls know to stay after her. I think she's their best player. We stop her and we can win this. The Ridge Runners settled down after that. They managed to keep the other team's best player from getting a decent shot at the goal. The half ended with Ridge Runners down by 2 goals. Girls, you all know how I try to stress team play. They know Kansas is our best scorer and they've hounded her the entire half, pointed out Laura. We really need the rest of you to step up. When Kansas moves to one side, pass the ball to the other side. They're concentrating totally on Kansas. Take some hard shots at goal. Their goalies only had to block a few marshmallows. Make her work. Ridge Runners came out for the second half with a much more aggressive attitude. The girls began bombarding the goalie and scored twice with follow-up shots on rebounds after the goalie made a save. With less than a minute left in the game, Kansas made her first goal of the game to put the Ridge Runners up by 1. It was the final goal of the game. The Ridge Runners had advanced to the next round. The girls were ecstatic. They hugged each other and Laura before embracing their fans. Laura saw Jack sweep Kansas up in a bear hug. When he placed Kansas down, one of the team mothers wrapped her arms around him and kissed him soundly on the cheek. Laura was slightly miffed but realized she nothing about which to complain. She was turning to speak to a parent when she felt strong hands swing her around. Suddenly she was in Jack's arms. It had been almost 7 years since she had enjoyed that simple pleasure. The Jack she was now clinging to was like a piece of steel. She was not a small woman, but Jack swung her off her feet effortlessly. That was some great coaching, praised Jack. Kansas told me what a good job you did. Thanks for doing this, and for treating the girls so well. Thank you for sponsoring us and renting the rooms, responded Laura as Jack held her. Some of the girls could never have afforded the trip and the rooms. It was very generous of you. I'll do about anything to see Kansas happy, admitted Jack. I never knew how deeply a man could feel about his daughter. She makes me feel alive. She wanted the other girls to have this experience. She loved it last year and she feels this is a better team. She also thinks you're a much better coach, added Jack. Dad, broke in Kansas. You've got a death grip on our coach. Unless you want me to start calling her Coach Mom, you probably should put her down so the rest of us can hug her. Oh. I'm sorry, Laura, apologized Jack as he carefully returned Laura to her feet. I got a little carried away. I don't think she minded all that much, wisecracked Kansas as Laura blushed crimson. You know you already have a room. I understand her mother had the same sense of humor, explained Jack as he turned to glare at Kansas. The entire team and most of their fans stayed to watch the next game. They'd be facing the winner of the game the following day. Laura wanted her kids to learn as much about their style of play as possible. She knew they'd have to play their best to even have a chance at winning. Kansas sparkled as she led her team to a 5-3 win the next morning. She scored 3 of her team's goals. The other team was unable to contain her speed and precision footwork. The win allowed the Ridge Runners to advance to the semifinals, which were played that afternoon. As it turned out, the semifinal game was against the traveling team Kansas had played with the previous year. Before the game, Kansas chatted briefly with the girls on the other team. It was obvious to the Ridge Runners and their fans that Kansas was well liked by her former teammates. It was also quite apparent Jack Masterson was popular with the team members, as well as the adults who supported the team, especially the mothers. The field had bleachers on only one side, so supporters of both teams were sprinkled throughout. More than a few moms took the time to hug Jack and wish him well. Near the end of the game, Laura and the others saw a different side of Jack's nature. The tournament was a fundraiser. It had always used local high school girls who played soccer for their school to officiate. Parents and coaches understood that while the girls received some compensation for their efforts, they were far from professional. It was a tied game when one of the officials called the ball out of bounds and mistakenly awarded the ball to the Ridge Runners' opponent to bring inbounds. A large man in his early 30s suddenly marched onto the playing field. Play stopped as the man loudly berated the girl. Both teams watched in stunned amazement as the man continued to shout threats and obscenities at the teen girl who had made the bad call. Laura was working her way toward the man when she saw the poor girl suddenly break into tears, run a few feet to the sideline and wrap her arms around Jack. Jack held her to his chest as the girl sobbed uncontrollably. That was when a woman in the stands made a declaration everyone in the now silent stands clearly heard. "Jack Masterson is going to kick that guy's ass." Apparently the brutish man heard the statement as well. He moved closer and spoke to Jack. "I may have gotten a little carried away. I didn't mean anything by it. Apologize to Macy and then get the hell out of here," snarled Jack as he patted the girl's back. "These kids are doing a fantastic job. They deserve our thanks and appreciation. They sure as hell don't need some damn bully demeaning them." The man mulled over Jack's words and again a female voice from the bleachers carried across the field. "You'd better take Jack up on his offer, asshole. He's this close to beating you like a rented mule." Laura managed to locate the woman who voiced so much faith in Jack's ability to handle the large man. She was a small blonde woman in her 40s and dressed in jeans and a cotton shirt. Laura realized she had seen the woman offering a drink earlier to the girl clinging so desperately to Jack. She was probably the girl's mother. The big man reached a decision. "I apologize, Mississippi. I was out of line. You girls are doing a good job officiating." With that statement, the man turned and headed for the parking lot. Everyone watched as the girl in Jack's arms gradually regained her composure. Jack found a tissue in his pocket and offered it to her. The girl smiled up at him, wiped her eyes before standing on her tiptoes and kissing Jack's cheek. "Thanks, Jack. I knew you'd stop that awful man," praised the girl. "Mom was right about you being ready to kick his ass. I could feel how tense you were. I'm just glad he didn't make you." The girl turned and trotted back onto the field as fans and players clapped and cheered in support. Once the cheering stopped, the officials gathered to discuss how much time was left and who had the ball once play resumed. Macy went to Jack's dojo last year, explained her mother as she correctly read the questioning looks of the other fans. "She thinks Jack hung the moon, and I sure can't argue the point. No one can abuse a woman when Jack's in the area. He simply won't allow it. Rick Jefferson is a pretty big guy. He's known to be willing to fight. I was afraid he'd hurt Jack," stated a mother of one of the Ridge Runners. "Jack Masterson?" asked Macy's mother in surprise. "Have you ever seen him compete? I'm here to tell you Jack would have handed that guy his ass." Play finally resumed once the officials, with the help of the adults running the tournament, sorted out the situation. With less than a minute left, Kansas promptly swiped the ball and fed a long pass to a teammate racing down the sidelines. The girl hammered the ball into the corner of the net, scoring what turned out to be the winning goal. Once the game was over, Kansas embraced most of the members of the losing team. Jack was extremely proud of her sportsmanship. Macy's mother had made her way down to where Jack stood and hugged him every bit as tightly as her daughter had. "Macy knew she could count on you. She really looks up to you, Jack. Her school work's improved and she's going to a state college next fall. She wants to become a teacher. You really put her on the right path last year." "Why was Rick Jefferson here, anyway?" asked one of the Ridge Runner fathers. "Sarah is his niece. She's the girl who scored the winning goal," responded the man's wife. "She must be pretty embarrassed." The championship game was scheduled for the next morning. It was Columbus Day and schools were closed for the holiday. An awards ceremony was planned to take place immediately after the game. The Ridge Runners' opponents had easily defeated the three teams they had faced to reach the finals. The team was deep in talent and well coached. The fans from Stone Ridge watched as their girls raised their level of play in a very fast-paced game. Down by a goal with less than 3 minutes, Kansas's teammate managed to deflect a pass by the other team. Kansas swept in, outraced everyone to the goal, and she powered the ball past the outstretched arms of the goalie to tie the game. Stone Ridge fans erupted in appreciation of Kansas's effort. Their cheers echoed across the field. The other team merely took their positions and prepared to resume play. The Ridge runners gave everything they had, but their opponent proved to be deep in talent as they managed to score with only seconds remaining. The Ridge runners were unable to mount an attack in the short time left and lost the game by a goal. Laura watched in pride as her girls hugged and congratulated each other as well as the winning team. The parents and fans of the girls moved onto the field to voice their pride in the effort their kids had made. It was only a few minutes before the awards ceremony was held. The players and fans of the Ridge runners cheered long and loudly as Laura stepped up to accept the second-place trophy. The best player from the winning team accepted the tournament MVP. Kansas was called to the front to receive the sportsmanship trophy, which she proudly displayed to her team and fans as she held it over her head and smiled broadly. Once the ceremony was over and Kansas had accepted congratulations from Jack, she asked if she could ride home in a van with several other girls. Once Jack spoke to the parents and confirmed they had room and were responsible drivers, he agreed to her request. As he watched the van in which Kansas was riding pull out of the parking lot, Jack felt a tug on his arm. "She's a delightful girl, Jack. You're doing a great job with her." Laura had seen Jack watch Kansas leave and decided to speak to him. She felt even though they were divorced, they should be able to carry civil conversations. At least, Jack seemed to have forgiven her enough for that. "I don't have a clue about raising a daughter," admitted Jack. "Females are a total mystery to me." "You proved that." Jack's remark stung Laura, but she refused to let it show. "Jack, I was wrong. I have no defense or excuse. You were right to leave me. I know that. All I can ask is for us to be able to speak to each other now and then without insults and rancor." "You're right, Laura. There's no reason for me to dredge up the past. You've done a great job coaching the girls. Kansas thinks your ace is high. She knows you could have been petty and made her presence on the team unbearable, but you didn't. We're both grateful for that. I may have been a dumb bitch when we were married, but I don't think I was ever a vindictive bitch," stated Laura calmly. "I like Kansas a lot, and I hope to be friendly with her after the soccer season is over, if you'll allow it. If you're afraid my lack of judgment and morals will rub off on her, and you don't want me to be in contact, I'll understand." "I'd like it if you remained interested in her," responded Jack. "I wasn't trying to imply you're an unsavory character. She needs a few adult female role models." "You know I'm not a suitable role model for a teenage girl," replied Laura. "You sure seem to be exactly that." "Everything I've seen and heard about you is good," stated Jack. "You forgot to add the qualifier, since you've returned to Stone Ridge. We both know you saw and heard something before you left which cast me in a rather poor light, to say the least. I like to think I've learned from my mistakes." "Your mom and dad are staring at us," observed Jack. "They look like the cat shit in their oatmeal." "Yeah, that's on me. I just couldn't tell them why you left," confessed Laura. "Naturally, they blame you." "They're good parents," replied Jack. "It's best you never told them. There'd be no upside in it for you, or them. Have a safe trip back and thanks for speaking to me. I'm finally gaining control of my guilt and remorse." "You're a good man, Jack." Laura left for home a few minutes later. Her parents had attended the 3-day tournament and were riding back with her. Laura wasn't surprised when her mother began quizzing her. "So what were you and Jack talking about?" asked Brenda. "Family," responded Laura. "I complimented him on what an exceptional job he was doing raising Kansas. He tried to deflect the credit. He told me what great parents I have." "Did he say that before or after he saw us shooting daggers at him?" asked Janet. "Truthfully? It was after he saw you glaring at him," replied Laura. "He isn't stupid. He understands why you dislike him. He seems to think it's to your credit." "I don't understand how he can be so damn reasonable about everything except honoring his marriage," groused Laura's father. 3 days later, a dejected Laura sat down to have dinner with her family. Kate noticed Laura's sour attitude immediately. "What's wrong, sis? You look down in the dumps." "It's that obvious?" Sarah Jefferson came to me after practice. She said her Uncle Rick has a friend who works for the county where Jack used to live. It seems when Jack adopted Kansas, he stated he was still married to me. It's difficult for single men to adopt preteen girls. Rick was pissed about what happened at the tournament and reported Jack. He said Jack lied on the paperwork and questioned if he was a suitable parent. There's going to be an investigation, and Jack could lose Kansas. Sarah said Kansas broke into tears when she told her. "I know Jack. He won't give up Kansas. He'll leave the country with her before he lets anyone separate them," stated Laura. "He does like to run when he's faced with a problem," allowed Laura's father. "Laura, you're still married to him," announced Kate. "He told me he thought you divorced him." "You think he divorced you? Neither of you idiots actually thought it through. Divorces are filed and people are notified. You're as married today as you were the day you left the church after the ceremony." "I don't see what difference that makes," discounted Brenda. "He's still living as a single man with an adopted daughter, even if he's staying with his mother. It isn't quite what he indicated the situation would be." "Laura, you need to call Jack. He and Kansas can move in with you and be the family he promised the courts," exclaimed Kate. "I won't have it," declared Brenda. "You don't know him anymore. He could be violent or abusive. Putting Laura in harm's way is not a solution." "Mom, Jack is not abusive. He'd never hurt me in any way," insisted Laura. "I'm going to go see him right now." Jack was sitting at the kitchen table. A sobbing Kansas sat on his lap and cried into his shirt while his very distraught mother looked on. The doorbell rang and Janet hurried to answer it. "Jack? Could I speak with you and Kansas?" came Laura's voice from the doorway. "It's not really a good time, Laura. Kansas and I are taking a trip and we have to pack. I'll have Kansas call you from the road, okay?" "You don't have to pack." "Well, you will have to pack, but not for a long trip," stated Laura softly. "Please, don't," replied Jack impatiently. "This doesn't concern you, except as it applies to your soccer team, and that's pretty far down on the list of things I worry about." "Jack, she's my daughter, too." Kansas stopped sobbing and turned her red eyes on Laura. Janet had gasped at Laura's declaration. She immediately dropped into a chair as she stared at Laura. "If you're trying to get Kansas away from me, you're in for one hell of a fight," snarled Jack. "You've got no right to call her your daughter." "Jack, I'm still your wife. The adoption papers indicate I'm her mother. I bet my signature's on some of the paperwork. I want you and Kansas to move in with me. If you're investigated, everything will be exactly as you told them it would be." "That would solve this problem," cried a hopeful Janet. "You and Kansas would still live in town. Kansas would still go to the same school with her friends and you'd still be able to help Jeff with the business." "That might work until Laura decided she was bored with us," pointed out Jack. "She could toss us out any time the whim struck her. If I leave the toilet seat up, she could throw me out. I can't risk Kansas being hurt like that." "Jack Masterson. You know goddamn well I wouldn't do that. I screwed up once. I admit it, but it doesn't define me as the person I am now. I'll put your name on the deed. Hell, I'll let you pay the damn mortgage if it makes you feel better. I love Kansas like a daughter. It would be an honor to be her mother." "Dad? Can we try it?" begged Kansas. "Coach is a really good person. She wouldn't do anything to hurt me, or you." "What are your options, Jack? Running to some country without extradition? How does that work out for most people? This isn't a movie. This is real. You have the chance to give Kansas a stable home life and to attend a good school with her friends. Do what's best for her, even if the thought of being around me makes you ill," insisted Laura. Jack went silent as he considered the situation. Once he came to a decision, he looked around. 3 women were intently staring at him. Okay, was all he said. 3 females squealed in delight. Kansas jumped up and rushed to Laura. Jack watched as the two embraced tightly. Laura kissed the girl on her forehead. He glanced at his mother. Tears were running down her cheeks. Jack wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and stood. I hate to break up this love fest, but I think we need to get moving. We don't know when, or even if, we'll be getting official visitors, announced Jack. We need to see your house and decide how this is going to work. Of course, agreed Laura. Why don't you follow me to my house right now so we can determine what we need? Can I ride with Coach? I mean Mom, asked Kansas. Mom, repeated Jack. Sure. Why do I have a feeling I've lost control? You only have 2 bedrooms, observed Jack as he looked around Laura's small ranch house. I don't see how this can work. It's simple math, replied Kansas with a devious grin. 2 people share 1 room and 1 person gets a room to herself. I'm not sharing a room with you, Kansas, stated Jack flatly. Of course not, agreed Kansas. I'm not your wife. I'm a teenage girl and need my own room. You 2 are married, so sharing a room shouldn't be an issue. We're doing this charade to prove, falsely, that we're a normal family, replied Jack. Sleeping with Laura goes beyond a charade. Sleeping with her, but sleeping only with her, would still make it a charade, teased Kansas. Is that so difficult? I'm standing right here, interrupted Laura. Kansas has to have her own room. Jack, you and I can share my bedroom. I have a queen-sized bed, so you can keep your honor intact. I'll even let you have 2 drawers and some space in my closet. Jack and Kansas were moved in before 11 that night. Laura was moved to tears when Kansas asked her a question before going to bed. Would it be okay if I called you Mom? If I get in the habit, it'll seem natural if someone comes here to check on us, reasoned Kansas. If it bothers you, I won't do it. Sweetheart, nothing would make me happier, managed Laura as tears formed in her eyes. How about at school? What do I call you there, wondered Kansas. I'll still be your mom, so it'll be fine, responded Laura. I don't think it would be a good idea, cautioned Jack. We don't want to suddenly start acting differently. We are trying to sell that we've been a family for some time. If Kansas called you Coach last week, I think she should continue to do that. Except I'll ride home with Mom after practice and help her make dinner and clean the house, promised Kansas. I can't wait to be part of a real family. Jack was tempted to caution Kansas about taking the family thing too far, when Laura caught his eye. She shook her head almost imperceptibly, but Jack caught the meaning. Laura was in bed watching Jack as he came out of the bathroom and carefully slid under the covers. You sleep in pajamas now? You always used to sleep naked. I'm trying to be a gentleman. It's kind of unnatural to sleep with a beautiful woman and not try to maul her all night. I've had a pair of pajamas I can slip on when I get up ever since Kansas began living with me, explained Jack. I won't be calling the police or anything if you accidentally wrap an arm around me or squeeze me in the middle of the night, replied Laura. I know you find me repulsive now, but if you forget who I am in your sleep and act accordingly, I won't complain. Thanks, Laura. I doubt it will be a problem, assured Jack as he turned his back and fell asleep in a remarkably short time frame. Jack was an early riser. His internal clock woke him up at 5 a.m. He was surprised to find he was clutching Laura's left breast and her ass was pushed up against his morning hard-on. He noted he was still on his side of the bed, so she must have moved during the night. Laura stopped at her mother's place the following evening after soccer practice. Kansas walked in the door behind her and faced Brenda. Your daughter is my mom now. Is it okay if I call you Grandma? Brenda had been determined to show Laura and Kansas her disapproval of the entire charade, but her resolve disintegrated when Kansas made her request. Of course you can, exclaimed Brenda as she hugged the girl cautiously. Would you like some milk and cookies? I just made them? So Mom's heart melted already, joked Kate as she walked into the kitchen and hugged Kansas. I'm your Aunt Kate and you're my favorite niece, Kansas. We're going to have so much fun. I get a new grandmother and an aunt, responded Kansas with a huge smile. I hope we spend more time with all of you. Dad knows Grandma doesn't like him very much, so we'll have to get together when he's working. Well, I like your dad plenty, replied Kate. He's sure a good-looking guy. How are he and Sis getting along? Okay, I guess. They spend half an hour working out their bedroom rules. I don't seem to quite have a normal family, at least not yet, added Kansas meaningfully. Ah. You think there's a chance? Prodded Kate. Well, Dad is pretty much a red-blooded male. Mom looks like a fashion model, but with more curves, so I don't think he has much of a chance, acknowledged Kansas as Laura blushed fiercely. You're not thinking of getting back with Jack permanently, are you? Demanded Brenda. That's not what this is about, is it? Mom, yes. Topped in to ask about some of your recipes, not to get a lecture on how to treat my husband and daughter, countered Laura immediately. I don't know how this will turn out. Jack doesn't like me very much right now, so you can take solace in that. Jack walked into Laura's house shortly after she and Kansas began dinner. He looked around and then went out the back door with a pad and measuring tape. Once dinner was over, Jack mentioned what was on his mind. Laura, I'd like to build an addition on this house. I was thinking we could go out another 26 feet by 14 feet. It would give you a bigger master bedroom with a large master bath and a huge walk-in closet, along with a half bath for guests. Can I show you what I'm thinking? That sounds great, Jack, but I can't afford it, so there's no sense even discussing it. I've struggled with my mortgage a few times already, replied Laura. I'd pay for the addition, if you'll allow it, revealed Jack. You're making a huge sacrifice for Kansas and me. I'd feel a lot better if you'd let me do it. It would add to your equity and give us a lot more room. Is sleeping with me that bad? Asked Laura as she struggled to maintain her composure. Does looking at me make you ill? No. It's not that. There's no reason for us to be so crowded. We'd still be in the master bedroom, but we'd be a lot more comfortable and we'd have a lot more closet space, stated Jack. I'll go along with it if you promise you'll still sleep with me for as long as we live together, demanded Laura. Take it or leave it. Jack looked at the set of Laura's jaw and knew she was serious. He glanced at Kansas to find her making a weak attempt at hiding a smirk. Shrugging his shoulders, Jack told the two women, "We have a deal." The soccer team remained undefeated in league play. As the season was winding down, Jack overheard Laura talking to Kansas about volleyball. By the end of the conversation, Laura had a new recruit for her team. Jack couldn't help but notice how close Kansas and Laura had become. They joked, shopped, cooked, and participated in team sports together. Kansas was as happy as he had ever seen her. His relationship with Laura was complicated. Laura respected his boundaries and remained friendly without being romantic or pushy. She never had any negative words about the work being done on her house. Jack had moved an excavator on site the first week he had moved in. Living in a mild climate allowed work to progress through the late fall. The addition to the house was scheduled to be completed by Christmas. Kansas and Laura were excited about the expansion and how it would give them each a lot more closet space. Kansas was going to move into Laura's old master bedroom. That would give her a private bath and a closet big enough to contain her clothes and accessories. Jack and Laura often discussed how they would respond to any agency which came to their door asking about Kansas and the family unit. They forged a plan which both solidly supported. As time went on, they began to wonder if anyone was ever going to interview them, or if the entire thing had been vastly overblown in their minds. The sleeping arrangements remained the same. Neither Laura nor Jack ever came to bed without wearing pajamas. Jack had stopped worrying about waking up with one or both of Laura's breasts in his clutches, or his hard-on pressing against her. She never mentioned it, so he decided it wasn't an issue. One night he was lying in bed thinking about a bid he was going to give on a job when he felt Laura squirm. He was surprised when she reached over and took his hand and placed it on her breast. She released a satisfied sigh and fell back into a deep sleep. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Laura and Kansas returned home from school to find Jack in the driveway in a deep conversation with a blonde woman. They continued to talk as Laura pulled into the garage. Jack came into the house a few minutes later. Kansas was in her room, so Jack approached Laura. "That was Beth Harding," remarked Jack casually as he watched Laura for her reaction. Laura tensed up as she bent over the sink. Jack saw her tremble as she squeaked out a question. "What did she want, Jack? Is she angry? What did she tell you?" "Her husband, Chuck, has a brain tumor. He's dying and she asked if I'd go visit him," revealed Jack. "Don't do it. He wants to rub your nose in it. He's trying to hurt you, Jack. Don't let him." "Please don't let him," begged Laura. "I told her I would, even if it was just to watch him die," replied Jack. "I'd love to hear what he has to say. He'll tell you I'm a slut. He got in my pants with very little effort. He'll probably try to tell you it was more than the one time you caught us, that I'm a lousy lay and laugh in your face. He's evil. It was my fault. I should have known better, but if he was a real man, he never would have pursued a married woman," reasoned Laura. "Why did you sleep with him, then? You didn't sound like a woman suffering too badly that night," recalled Jack. "In fact, you were saying his name over and over and telling him how good he was. I was crushed. I thought about killing you both, but I decided it was better to simply step out the back door and drive away. I don't know why I did it," sobbed Laura. "He was the big man on campus. He was a senior and I was a sophomore. He was the football star while I was just a wife, a married woman who was off limits to most men, but not to him. He was nice to me. I knew what he wanted and for some goddamn dumb reason thought I could take him for a spin and you'd never know. It was going to be my one fling. I ruined my life. I lost something I loved because I was young and stupid. I never blamed you for leaving. When I found your ring on the kitchen table, I knew it was over, that you must have come home and seen me with him. Now I'm living in a hell I created. I love Kansas, but we aren't a family, not really. I can't make it up to you. I know that. We'll never have that love binding us together like families should. It's totally my fault and I live with that knowledge every day." "Why didn't you tell me you weren't happy, or you wanted to try other men?" asked Jack softly. "I didn't want to try other men. I just wanted to feel like I was something special for one night. The school stud wanted me. The ironic part is how much smarter I became after you left. You were better looking, kinder, totally devoted to me, a better man in every way that mattered. Believe it or not, that was the last time I had sex," stated Laura. "You're still the only man who ever made love to me. I guess I can be thankful for that. I now know the difference between love and sex, and it's huge. I don't think I'll ever forget hurrying home from that seminar so we could spend the night making love only to find someone had taken my place," replied Jack with a scowl. "You almost killed me, Laura. I would have given my life for you, and you nearly took it. Saying you're sorry doesn't make up for the pain I've endured for 6 years. I know that, Jack. I really do. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. You're not the kind of man to overlook the tremendous disrespect I showed you," reasoned Laura. "I've suffered because of my stupidity, too. I'm in a sham marriage with a wonderful man and a beautiful daughter. Think how it hurts to know I had it all and I pissed it away. Every time I look at you or Kansas, I'm reminded of how foolish I was. The pain hasn't lessened over time. In fact, it's increased as my love for you and Kansas grows. You can't ever love me again and I can't ever truly be Kansas's mother if you don't. I understand that. I just try to enjoy every day we spend together. I know it'll end, and probably soon," acknowledged Laura. "Every night when we go to bed, I lie there hoping you'll run your hands over me, kiss me, make love to me, but it never happens." "You don't have any trouble resisting me," stated Laura sadly. "You simply tolerate me. That's on me. Most men wouldn't resist me so easily, but the one guy I want has no interest. Karma's a bitch." In early December, Jack stopped at the local hospital and asked for Chuck Harding. He wasn't prepared for what he saw when he entered the man's room. The person on the bed looked like they were lucky to tip the scales at 100 pounds. He looked like a skeleton with skin stretched tightly across it. "Jack! Thanks for stopping in. If you want to slap me, or even suffocate me, feel free. I deserve it, said the sick man in the way of a greeting. I just came by to make sure you know how happy I am that you're fucking dying, revealed Jack. If you look close, you can see the smile on my face. That's one of the reasons I told my wife I wanted to see you. I thought my suffering might make you feel better, admitted the sick man. It feels good to know I'm making amends, even if I have to die to do it. You're talking shit, replied Jack. Nobody wants to suffer, and nobody wants someone else to enjoy seeing it. What the fuck do you really want? I did you wrong, Jack. I spent most of my life being an asshole. You caught me in bed with your wife, but you didn't kill me like you wanted. I saw the old shotgun propped against the wall when I came downstairs. Laura only saw your ring on the table. To this day, I've never seen a person in as much pain as Laura felt that night. I owe you and I got no way to give you payback. My life isn't worth shit. You can see that. The only thing left for me is dying. It's going to happen whether you're here or not. I'm just offering you a chance to watch me die. It might bring you some peace and it won't hurt me in the least, concluded Harding. How would your wife feel about that? Asked Jack. It seems pretty damn macabre to me. I told her what I did to you and Laura. She understands how I want to do something to ease my conscience. My dying won't win me forgiveness, be you. It'll help you feel better, so she accepts it. I would ask that you don't cheer or applaud when the Grim Reaper takes me. That would hurt Beth and she doesn't deserve it. Why'd you do it, Chuck? You had lots of girls. Laura was all I ever had or wanted. You fucking ruined it, snarled Jack at the ill man. Because I was an asshole. Because I could. How the fuck is that for a reason? It wasn't until I met Beth that I realized what an asshole I had been, admitted Chuck. I didn't give a shit if your marriage ended. Laura didn't mean anything to me. That's how low I was. It's embarrassing as hell to admit. It wasn't personal, asked Jack. You weren't trying to ruin my life or break us up for some reason? I always wondered why you'd go after a married woman when you had so many available. I hardly knew who you were. I wasn't thinking about you, except that I was tapping some guy's wife, confessed Chuck. She's a beautiful woman, so I wanted to try her pussy. That's all she was to me, a little married pussy on the side. If you weren't so sick, I'd kick your ass, threatened Jack. If I wasn't so sick, I'd want you to do exactly that, replied Chuck. I've grown up, a bit too late, admittedly. There's no excuse for my actions. I realize it now. A bullet between my eyes would be too good for me. You miserable bastard, growled Jack. I'd be doing the world a favor by holding that pillow over your face. True, except you'd be in a world of trouble. Killing a dying man is considered the same crime as killing a robust, healthy person, reasoned Chuck. Why don't you just stop in when you can? There's a good chance you'll see me go to the happy hunting grounds. Jack had never been as angry as he was at that moment. The guy wrecked his marriage simply because he wanted a strange piece of ass. To Jack, Laura had been the perfect wife, a woman devoted to him, willing to share the rest of her life with him. Then Chuck Harding decided he'd like to try some strange pussy. I think I'll take you up on your offer, asshole, replied Jack vehemently. I'll be pissing on your grave in a few days, motherfucker. Jack was true to his word. He visited Chuck Harding several times a week, although he didn't mention it to Laura or Kansas. He knew his intentions were morbid, at best. The third time Jack stopped in, Chuck's wife, Beth, was there with a small boy. Jack nodded to the woman and took a seat, but he soon rose and left the room. It was impossible to revel in the death of even the vilest human while his wife and young son were present. Jack vowed to himself that he would not end his death watch. Harding deserved exactly what he was getting. The next time Jack stopped in, Chuck was in a pensive mood. You left because my wife and kid were here, didn't you? It's harder to enjoy my death when you see the innocent people affected by it, isn't it? I'm here to see you die. I have no quarrel with your family, replied Jack. Even as he spoke, Jack realized he sounded pathetic. Was this the kind of man he was? Chuck started telling Jack about his son and the things the boy enjoyed. Then he went into detail on how he met his wife and how she had turned his life around. Jack knew full well Chuck was trying to gain sympathy. He also knew it would never happen. Jack stopped to see Chuck on Christmas Eve. The man had become noticeably weaker since Jack had first seen him. This time, Jack had a purpose and he quickly got to the point. "Chuck, I hate what you did, but I can't maintain my hatred for you. I've given it some thought and I realize the best revenge is to live well. I'm here to tell you I'll make certain your wife and son will never go wanting. You'll die knowing the man whose life you ruined is caring for your family." "I can see where you might think you're getting revenge that way," replied Chuck weakly. "You're really not very good at the whole vengeance thing. I hate that I did that to you and Laura, but it somehow turned out to be a good thing for my family. That's some irony. A despicable act ensures the future of my wife and kid." "It's the best I could come up with," offered Jack. "I won't be stopping in anymore. I don't want to see you die, or even suffer. That's gone. It gives me no pleasure." "You realize you're pretty much telling me you're forgiving me, don't you?" responded Chuck. "You found it in your heart to move past what I did to you, something no man can ever be expected to forgive." "I never said that, but you can think whatever you want." "I really don't give a shit," retorted Jack. "Tell me this, Jack. I hurt you almost beyond your ability to endure. How can you forgive a miserable bastard like me, yet not find it in your heart to forgive a woman who loves you like Laura does? What have I done to gain your forgiveness that she hasn't? I saw the relief on your face when you let your hatred for me go. Imagine how good your heart would feel if you forgave Laura. Imagine her in your arms, maybe having your children. Wouldn't that be better than punishing her?" "Fuck you, Harding. You're the one who said I've forgiven you." "I never said that." "Not as so many words, but you did say it, Jack," replied Chuck softly. "I'm going to die soon. I'll die happy knowing you've managed to grant me forgiveness, and you'll take care of Beth and Charlie. You really suck at revenge, Jack. It isn't your strong point. If I never see you again, please tell Laura I'm sorry." Jack left the hospital in a rage. The dumb fucker thought he was forgiven. He wanted Jack to forgive Laura. It would be a cold day in hell when that happened. As Jack drove, he went over his last conversation with Chuck Harding. The man had gotten to him. Jack had to admit that. He never should have gone to the hospital that first time. When Jack got home, his driveway was filled with cars. He had to drive down the street 100 yards to find a parking spot. He had forgotten about the party Kansas and Laura were having. It was a housewarming/Christmas party. The addition had been finished for 2 days and the furniture, including a huge king-sized bed, had arrived yesterday. Every friend, relative and co-worker of his, and Laura's, had been invited. Kansas had asked many of her friends to stop in. He was still fuming at the last words he had with Chuck when he pushed the door open and stepped inside. Guests turned at his entrance and suddenly went silent. Laura and Kansas had been serving drinks and snacks when Jack walked into the living room. It was immediately apparent that he was not himself. Laura had never known him to drink much, but she considered the possibility as Jack's eyes swept the room. Once his eyes fell on her, he stopped moving. "Oh," mumbled Kansas as she realized her father was in a state she had never before seen. Jack finally took a few steps farther into the room, but his eyes never left Laura. The silence continued as everyone became mesmerized by the intensity of the emotion on Jack's face. "What is it, Jack?" asked Laura with concern. "Do you really want to be my wife?" demanded Jack. Yes, I do," replied Laura softly. "A wife gives her husband all of her love. She belongs to him, only him." Laura's father tried to step in, but Kate quickly stopped him with a hand gesture. "I agree," managed Laura as tears formed in her eyes. "A husband takes care of his family. He gives them everything he has. He deserves respect," stated Jack emphatically. Laura simply nodded, completely ignoring everyone who was watching her exchange with Jack. A good wife wouldn't complain if her husband took her whenever he needed her, including right now, and on that big damn bed. Not if he loved her, and she loved him, agreed Laura. Right, snarled Jack as he moved quickly to scoop Laura into his arms. Kansas, close the door behind us. Okay, Dad, answered Kansas immediately as she pulled the bedroom door closed. I'll entertain the guests, so don't hurry on their account. What just happened? Asked Laura's mother. Will Laura be okay? Oh, yeah, said Kate with a laugh. Sis is going to be okay for the first time in years. It was just half an hour later when Jack and Laura sheepishly opened the bedroom door. They were freshly showered and wearing different clothes. Laura clung to Jack as their company began gently kidding them. That didn't take very long, observed one of Jack's equipment operators. I hope the boss managed to get the job done. He did very well. Thanks for asking, quipped Laura before she quickly kissed Jack's cheek. Jack, I don't pretend to know what all went on between you and my daughter, but her mother and I are damn glad to see things are on an even keel now, stated Laura's father as he extended his hand. Just don't do it again. As Jack shook his father-in-law's hand, he glanced at Laura before answering. I don't think there's any chance of that happening. Laura and I are going to be together from now on. To think it was my idea for you two to live together so Kansas's adoption wouldn't be challenged. It's funny nothing ever came of that threat, pointed out Kate. Well, I was interviewed at school a few days later, admitted a grinning Kansas. I told them we had a great family. Mom and Dad loved me, and each other. I knew they'd come to realize it sooner or later. I never told anyone about it because I wanted us to stay together. It was the reason we moved in with Mom. How come you were so emotional when you came home, Jack? Asked his curious mother. I guess I was trying to determine exactly who I was hurting, and why. I finally realized the pain created by revenge is mostly self-inflicted. I needed to treat myself better. Laura's going to have to suffer with me for the rest of our lives.